Hello, listeners. Welcome to yet another episode of the Startup Catalyst. Special guest today is Pawan Raj Kumar. He's more than everything else. He's a very dear friend, a very well-known face in the startup ecosystem. Himself being an entrepreneur, now he's a mentor, advisor, and also VC in his latest avatar. Hope to have a very engaging discussion with Pawan. Welcome, Pawan.
Yeah, thanks, Hetal. It's awesome to be here and discuss things with you. Look forward to having this discussion.
Great. So the Startup Catalyst is basically a podcast show which is created for the incubatees and potential incubatees of GRG Gen Next, which is the latest incubator in city of Coimbatore. And the idea is that we want to give more of a human face to our mentors. While we have got 40 plus mentors on our panel, we are trying to get them become very more familiar with the incubatees. Mentoring in the startup ecosystem, as you know, is very critical. So what's been your own experience, Pawan, from a mentoring perspective?
So, Hetal, as you know, that I have been investing as an angel in startups for over 12 years now. I have invested in over 40 companies, and it's only been about 18 months or something like that since I decided I wanted to be a full-time investor. And when I started my journey, my idea was really to see how I can be of assistance to the founders apart from capital.
Yeah.
But what I realized very quickly was that the startup founders are not necessarily looking for much more than just the capital. It's a case where I think the investors feel that the founders need hand-holding, and the founders think that first put the money and then we'll talk. So I understood that fact because being a founder, I realized that anybody who does not have skin in the game, their advice is not something which, as a founder, I would be very, interested in on mentoring, let's say, not just advice. Of course, there are advisors and consultants who can do a great job as well. But as a mentor, I realized that I also can be a good mentor when I have skin in the game. So I started investing, and then that's when I started also taking up mentoring roles. Uh, in terms of what I saw in the founders was that I think, especially those which I invested in, they're pretty sorted in what business they're doing. They understand the nuances of the business, uh, but they needed a little bit of, or they always continue to need a little bit of support in terms of being a sounding board. There are lots of problems that they face, which probably they don't know the answers of or are confused about it. So somebody who's gone through the whole journey, not once, few times,
Yeah.
uh, from both sides of the table as a founder, as an investor, I think I'm able to be a good sounding board. That's one. Uh, Second is in terms of opening up my network, right? So, which over the years you tend to build, which helps the sales, which helps supplies, which helps keep the cost down. And the third is also in the aspect of helping them build the team, connecting them with the right people, or maybe meeting the people, interviewing them to understand, to get to see if there's the right fit.
Yeah.
These are three areas where I felt that the founders needed me to help them.
Right. Well, it's good that you mentioned that your past experience as an entrepreneur yourself has been one of the driving force why you wanted to actually mentor founders. So there is a push and pull, right? There is a certain inherent urge from your end based on your experience where you feel the founders would need help. And then there is a pull aspect where, founders might have specific requirements. Are they normally the same, or do you see a disconnect between what you would want to help versus what the founders are looking from help and support perspective?
There is a difference. uh, but so, unsolicited advice, I stay away from. Uh, Try to stay away from it. Uh, because I think that a very important aspect of entrepreneurship is to experiment and fail. So I sometimes also feel that that's not just necessary; it helps them learn. something which I wouldn't have learned otherwise. So it opens up my eyes as well. So I try to stay away from advice, unsolicited advice, as I said. The founders, the other issue is that founders typically don't come out in front of their investors as honestly as you would want them. So what I keep an eye on or was is overselling. Sometimes in order to just hide the negatives, just to come out and show a brave face, the entrepreneurs also have this tendency of being little bit of you know overselling mode all the time. So I tend to tell them not to do that because if everything is good, then there is no point uh, in me being there. So I really want to see the negative. Yeah, so I am more concerned about they not telling what's wrong rather than what they need to know from me. So I hope I'm able to make that difference.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And when you started the point about not wanting to give unsolicited advice, I think one simple comparison which I would want to make is between founders and kids and our children, right? We want both of them to succeed in life. We want both of them to experience certain degree of failure, which kind of gets them a lot of rigor. We want both of them to learn through their own experiences rather than we giving them ready advice which could help them to avoid a lot of mistakes. But at the
Yes,
end of the day, we have our vested interest in making sure that they do well as well, right? So it's
yes.
it's about letting them go to the edge but preventing them from finally falling if you know that they're going
It's
to
a,
fall.
it's a fabulous analogy you've given it, Ravi. Because uh, you you just want, as a parent, what I feel is that I want my child to, uh, you know, feel that they should have the confidence of exploring something different, something new,
Hmm.
but at the same time have a feeling that, it's okay to go back to dad and say, oh, I fucked up, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So that's the kind of impression I also want to have with the startup founders that,
Yeah.
hey, I'm
And
here. You
yeah.
want to come back and talk? I'm
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And that level of candid acknowledgement, I think, is again a huge pain area in both cases where
Yeah,
children are not willing to admit that they messed up. At the
yeah,
same time, the founder does not want to admit to the investor, advisor, mentor that they messed up. They would probably want to correct the thing, and then after that, once everything is sorted out, then they
yeah,
would gradually say that, look,
yeah,
this has
yeah.
been so bad, but look, now everything is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. This has happened many times, many,
Yeah.
many times. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Any particular instance, any startup that you want to talk about? What situation they were in, what kind of mentorship that you provided, where they are now, would be a good to kind of make a miniature case study out of it.
Yeah. So there is a um, there is a company which I invested in. I am also sort of an advisor in the business. I think it's okay to name the company. The company is called Centrity. Awesome founder, Daljit. Uh, he, uh, I think I invested in them uh, after he onboarded me as a sort of mentor advisor. Though my investment was already committed, so that is a different case. And I started working with him while he was doing the fundraise, largely on understanding on him to position the fundraise, and in order to understand how the investment world works. So I was mostly guiding him on that, connected him with a few investors as well. And at the same time, since I understand the market very well, he's in the space of supplying to hotels. So I understand that space. I've been a founder in that area. I know a lot of customers. So I was also able to connect him to some of the potential customers. Not only potential customers, even some good suppliers. So one was making him understand how the investment space works, also make him connected to some of the potential partners in his business. Uh, Third aspect where I started working was to see what is going wrong in the business today, what has gone wrong, what mess has been, and how do we clear that up. So over there, I must say Daljit was very candid and he gave me a very clear picture of what was going on. There were some issues in the with the investors as well. So I got into some calls with those people. I built a strategy with him to figure out how to solve that. Eventually, we solved it, and hence the next round also happened. There was some push and pull needed, but I was able to help him with that. And the funding round happened. So yeah, this is the way I was able to help him tide through it. The journey didn't end here, obviously. It just started because I just invested. And largely what happens during the investment time is that the founders are so focused on talking to the investors, their time from talking to the customer is compromised.
Yeah.
As a result, business suffers.
Yeah.
And also the whole transaction takes time. So their commitments, start to fail. Uh,
Yeah.
so it sort of hurts the business, and it did hurt him, and it hurts every other business for that matter. Um, and after taking the money for a few months, I did not hear much from him. And I knew exactly what was going on. I reached out to him and I told him, asked him if, business has gone down. He said, yeah, that has happened. I said, you're not the only one. It happens with everyone. Let's talk. He said, yeah, but it's okay. I'm getting everything back on track. And a couple of months later, he came back and told me, okay, now we are at the same level as we were when we were raising money. And now in a couple of months, we'll be double of this and then the triple of this. And that's he's been able to maintain. So
Hmm.
I came back once again, more actively in contact with him to sort of work with on both the things in terms of working on the next funding round and
Yeah.
working on the customer side as
Right. That's an interesting point. And the other thing which came to my mind as you were speaking is
well.
what role does investment play in mentorship, right? So you've been a mentor for a company where you did not put money. You've been a mentor for a company where you were an angel investor, and now you're a mentor in a company where you're actually a VC. Does the degree of investment in the company impact the kind of mentorship that you can provide versus the kind of mentorship which the founder needs? Do you see a difference in that relationship based on the fact that the level of money involved and the money angle, of course, being involved?
Yeah. Personally, it doesn't matter to me. Uh, I am. It's not about the amount of money that I have put in. Uh, I think it's all. It's the. In my case, it just gives me and both the founder the information that I have skin in the game. It's not the amount that matters in that sense.
Hmm.
As a VC, it's not just my money, right? It's the money of other investors that's going in. So my responsibility in that sense is much larger. I
Hmm.
could lose my money, but losing other people's money is much tougher.
Hmm.
So don't want to do that, not as a VC.
Yeah.
Uh, so in that case, I would put in a lot more effort
Hmm.
in on actively engaging with the founders. So,
Yeah.
like in this case, which I was mentioning to you about Daljit, as a VC, I would have been much more proactive, reached
Hmm.
out on a monthly basis.
Hmm.
So now I'm building ZeCa. So ZeCa, one of the things which we are doing because we are a very early stage fund, pre-seed,
Yeah.
seed levels, when we are investing 2 to 3 crores in a company, when the
Yeah.
company is sort of figuring things out, there is some revenue, but obviously there are chances of a couple of pivots still to happen.
Hmm.
Um, we have made a policy that every company that we invest in, for the 6 months, we will meet them at least once a month. I mean, because those first 6 months are very crucial after raising money.
Yeah.
Things can go wrong in many ways. So we are not we are being careful that the founder doesn't ghost us in order to hide the problems.
Yeah,
We want to go out and say, okay, let's solve the problems. Let's just
yeah,
talk about the problems. So the
yeah,
first 6 months are crucial for us, and after that, we feel that they would be ready for preparing for the next round, and that's when things can change.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's the difference in terms
Hmm.
of an angel investor versus being a VC.
No, that's a good point. And the other thought which occurred to my mind while you're fairly straightforward in saying that the nature of support that you would extend does not depend on the amount of money that you invested. And there's a certain degree of responsibility which obviously comes up in the VC hat purely because it's not just your money, there's a larger set of people whose interests are also involved. But from a startup founder perspective, does the nature of mentorship or the nature of guidance vary when they are on their own, which is basically a bootstrap model, versus when they are taken up external funding, where the fiduciary responsibility goes up? And you mentioned about the case with Daljit, where additional funds bring in additional responsibility, which takes away their bandwidth from their core business, which is to
Yeah.
grow or scale up the startup as well. So have you observed that as a difference? And if you could just take a couple of examples where in case A, where the founder was not funded, and case B, where the founder was funded, the nature of mentorship or guidance turned out to be drastically different.
Uh, yeah, so of course it changes. Every stage of the company, uh, the kind of help they need changes. A bootstrapped company is largely a company which is still figuring out something about the product market fit, right? Either it's a product or the GTM, or maybe the customer persona has not been clearly defined. So over there, I would be a guy who would push them to understand their brand positioning, their brand entity. In case of a consumer business, in case of a B2B business, it would be largely about GTM or getting customer feedback to improve the product. So this is what happens at the bootstrap when they haven't raised money. Um, in the case when the money has been raised, I think it is a lot about the pressure on the founder is a lot about how do you give how do you create value for the investors, and the value for the investors largely comes from scale. So how do you scale? When is the next funding round? What's your story to the investors for the next round? So the kind of questions change, um, uh, but it at every point of their journey, I have always stressed on one thing, that focus on your customer, not on your investor. If you are focusing on your customer, understanding what the customer needs or how their needs are changing, or how do you change yourself to figure out to actually address their bigger need, which you might have missed. So if you continue to focus on the customer, the investors will come to you. So this is the sort of a horizontal in the advices that I give at every stage of the company.
Yeah.
Uh, Focus on the customer. Just keep on solving for your customer.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point that you mentioned about focusing on the customer, which obviously will start delivering results in terms of numbers. And if your numbers are good, then the level of attractiveness of investors goes up, whether you are already having investors or you are looking for your first investor to come on board. The other aspect, of course, which comes in as critical in the mentoring is the market ecosystem or lay of land. And obviously, since you are a seasoned entrepreneur, you would probably have a constant lookout on how the market is performing and how the ecosystem for startups in general is, and then of course
Yeah.
for startups which are in specific industries. So, what's your take on the startup ecosystem as we see right now in 2025? Do you see a drastic shift happening from what it was, 22, 23, when there was ton and shitloads of funding coming for startups, which has kind of dried up? And I don't know, when I last checked, the funding winter was still going on, even though it's already getting hot and sunny in most parts of India. So what's your take
Yeah.
on the ecosystem right now?
Uh, I I hope that the bull run of 21 never comes back, frankly.
Hmm.
But it's cyclical, never know when that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, um, there are few founders who are still living in that world.
Hmm.
But I think investors have moved on. Most of the founders which I meet today are pretty much aware of the fact that the investors and the market is looking for more, let's say, profitable or businesses which are on the path of profitability. Execution is a much bigger thing, but story is not dead, right? People are able to raise money on stories still. So it's a mix in the market.
Hmm.
Um, I'm- Funding winter is a very, I think, a Western phrase. India does not have dearth of, at least the Indian VCs don't have dearth of money. There is
In
enough
India, we
money
like
available.
winter. In West, winter is people are scared of winter because of the snow and the acute coldness, right? We don't mind winter here. We don't do
Yeah, so
that.
we keep going through that.
I would say
Uh,
funding rather than funding winter in India is more appropriate.
that's true. That's true. So
Yeah.
I'll give you an idea from the context of where I am
Yeah.
today. Actually, I have been in this sustainability space as an investor now for more than 6 months. I started focusing on this in August, September last year, and that's when I stopped talking to all non-sustainability focused businesses. So my very immediate knowledge is also based on my experience in the last few months. The founders are in this space are slightly different uh, in the sense that these are the people who actually uh, have passion for the sustainability. They are actually building, and largely a lot of them are hard products. These are not software companies. Even if it is technology, it's largely deep tech. There are PhDs here who have been working in the labs for 2 to 3 years. So they are largely people who are dedicating their life for this. Uh, in Many other businesses which I've seen is that the story is around exits. In this case, it's about value creation. So it's a little different.
Hmm.
Uh, it- and I think the investors over here are also a little different, though there are fewer investors in this space of sustainability. Uh, but I personally have really enjoyed this in the last few months. The founders are focused on creating value, as I said. So they are thinking much more about the uh, customer. In fact, most of them don't have an idea of how to raise money. So they need to be actually mentored about that, about scalability, about exits, and everything else.
Hmm.
So I think given that, and given that uh, in other sectors also investors are looking for businesses which are scaling, but with better unit economics and path to profitabilities.
Yeah.
Largely, the industry has changed in terms of building businesses rather than building stories.
Hmm. Got it.
Yeah,
The slogan which or the suggestion which I make to most of the early stage founders is that I hope you never raise money. The best money is customer money and not investor money.
that's
And
true.
I also tell a lot of people who are very happy when they get a positive validation from an investor and they're like, I told you so kind of look on their face. I'm like, investor validation has zero value, right? The real validation is from your customers and
Yeah,
legions of customers, not just one customer, right? So if
absolutely.
you're not able to grow your business over a period of time by maybe the same customer coming back to you or repeatedly or whatever, right? So the funding winter obviously refers to the lack of investor money available for startups. Does the funding winter also apply that in principle the startups are struggling? Of course, in certain segments or certain industries, that's very much true. Your old flame, which is consumer D2C food tech are heavily driven by marketing, and marketing is invariably driven by investor money because
Yeah.
you can't be having stockpiles of money which you spend on multiple marketing campaigns unless you are a
Correct.
serial investor, and that also is quite rare that you would put in your own money.
Yeah.
Is that a true reality that if the investors pull back drastically and they remain pulled back for a significant period of time, will the startup industry as a whole suffer because there are more founders who are creating business plans which are oriented around getting investor money rather than trying to come up with a game changing idea and execution and going with that rigor for 18, 24 months before they come and say, boss, I think I need some money to sustain this.
Uh, no, so Hital, I have my thought towards it. I think that in any case, anybody who's building a business for investors is not going to succeed. So let's just disregard that category of businesses. Every
Hmm.
business which is focused on the customer is going to win. So that's where the investors are going to make money as well. I also like your line that hope you never raise money. I think that's a great line. But having said that, I think the availability of capital along with the risk-taking ability of the VCs has helped create a lot of businesses and will continue to do that. I think uh, entrepreneurship should not be limited to people who are born in rich families, right?
Yeah.
People who have, and that was the case, a couple of decades back. You have to be born with family wealth in order to set up a new business.
Yeah.
But the availability of capital has helped a lot of entrepreneurs to come out,
Hmm.
create new solutions, create
Hmm.
new businesses, values, uh, and uh, and they continue to do that because they have access to capital. So I don't think there is anything wrong in raising money or having access to capital. In fact, it's very good.
Yeah.
India needs a lot more job creators than job seekers.
Hmm.
For people to be employed, somebody has to set up a business, and it can't be left only to the few rich families of the country.
Yeah.
There are thousands and tens of thousands of great entrepreneurs that can come out. I actually have been meeting people who have farmers' son, no background, haven't finished school, but great entrepreneurs, and
Hmm.
all they need is capital. How long can they continue by taking 25 lakh grants from the government, raising debt of 50 lakhs, 1 crore from SIDBI, and then slowly growing, spending their life building a business of 10 crores per annum kind of a thing, provided that they have great idea, they have understood the customer problem, they've got the product right,
Yeah.
and there is a big market. They should have access to capital, and
Hmm.
and and I think that's a good thing, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah. Something which I've learned from my experience, the whole concept of tranches and milestones should be a thumb rule in every investment. Not many founders know it, but that's something which could be a great way for
Yeah.
ensuring that you're allowing the right set of founders, as you rightly mentioned, who are not from the financial background that could support even, let's say, a
So
5 lakh investment, which nowadays is minimum, right? I mean, without 5, 10
yeah.
lakh rupees, you can't even buy a good laptop and set up a nice area
So
for you to start working. But if you link that tranches or subsequent fundings to certain milestones which are pre-decided or which are agreed upon between the investor and founder, I think we could be creating a legion of lot of potential founders rather than investors blankly saying no the moment they get a slide deck which is talking about potential all over with very little to prove uh, uh, from
yeah,
a runway
yeah,
perspective of what
yeah,
they
yeah,
did as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it's a great time to be an entrepreneur, right? In India, the access to capital, access to knowledge
Yeah,
is there. Access to market is not that tough either.
yeah,
Uh, m- uh, India is digitized. Government is giving grants. There are incubators. There are ways of raising There are there are founders I know who have been able to raise 2 to 3 crores just through grants by participating in various competitions that incubators run.
Mhm.
And this is awesome, right? Um, and I think these founders who do this, right, who go through this grunt of participating in competitions, filling up forms, going for events, and hustling to raise money, are able to do that because they're focused on execution. Um, and eventually, big money also comes to them.
Hmm.
No matter no matter how good you are at storytelling, finally execution is going to win. And I think every VC, every investor today understands.
Hmm.
Uh, there are cases I know of VCs who are also doing milestone-based investment. They give money in tranches.
Hmm.
There are VCs. We are going to do this. We are looking at investing a smaller check, let's say 10% of what we normally do in a company, and see how they grow. And if they are able to use that money diligently, come to the next level based on the milestones we have agreed upon, we will be ready to put more money. And because we will be ready to put more money, there will be other VCs who will join us as well, and they'll be able to raise maybe $1 million next round, right? So
Yeah.
uh, I think it's a good thing what you said. If the uh, founders are given milestones,
Yeah.
and if they achieve those milestones, based on that, more money can be given to them. Uh, People who take those challenges, I think, uh, would definitely make better founders, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the space that you are now focusing on, zero carbon, or is that a space where it's possible to start off a business idea with not a stockpile of money, and you can start with a small sum as well? And what could that possible business model be?
Absolutely. Um, so there are various, I mean, from the perspective of this whole space, every sector is working on that. So
Hmm.
there are SaaS models, there are AI models, there are businesses built on providing services, right? In terms of services, in terms also finances. So debt is there. All these businesses traditionally also did not require too much of founder money to start with,
Hmm.
but of course they need a lot of money as they grow. So in this case also, there are all these businesses don't need to raise too much money.
Yeah.
There are a lot of businesses where they have to set up a factory, right? So if you're an OEM, if you're making an e-bike, you need to raise a lot of money to start with, to set up a small factory. Even it takes a lot of money. Sometimes there are products like windmills or some other solar panel design or whatever, which requires a lot of money in research.
Hmm.
So this requires lab time, access to a lot of journals.
Yeah.
Uh, in that case, once again, and a lot of prototyping has to be done. Uh,
Hmm.
POCs need to be done. Sometimes most of the POCs are not paid for in the beginning. So yeah, again, that requires a lot of capital.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are many cases where you would need a lot of money, but
Got it.
still, as I said, there are many cases where bootstrap it means like you put in maybe 15, 20, 25 lakhs of your
Hmm.
money or your family's money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, even this money you can win with from grants very
Hmm.
easily. What
Got
I've
it.
seen very constant, I mean, I meet 3 or 4 founders every day in this space, and mostly, so out of four, if I meet three, would have put in 25 lakhs of their money that they saved, right,
Hmm.
in the last 5, 8 years of their jobs.
Hmm.
And 25, 30 lakhs they would have got grants from Startup India or STPI or some incubator, Gujarat state governments or whatever. So they're able to get 50 to 75 lakhs to build their business before they reach VCs like us.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. So I think now we come to the most interesting part of the podcast, which is more of a rapid fire. So I hope you're ready.
Yes,
I don't have
let's
a
do it.
coffee mug like Karan, sorry about that. But I'll treat you to coffee when we meet next.
I'm good with
Uh,
that.
One global entrepreneur which you idolize.
Uh, Elon Musk always comes in mind. So
Uh, One Indian entrepreneur which you idolize.
from the current lot, um, Sachin Mansal.
One business model which most of the people on this podcast might never have heard of. Business
Business
idea
model,
or business idea, I think a startup idea.
insect protein.
Very interesting. Got it. Your favorite investment so far?
My
All time
favorite,
favorite,
favorite
mind you. Not just ZeCa, all time favorite.
all-time favorite investment, which I love talking about, is in a company called Celestia.
Uh-huh. What are they
Yeah.
into?
Celestia is a blockchain company based out of London. I never wanted to invest in this. I invested because somebody really forced me to do it. And they became a unicorn within 2 years.
Wow, fabulous. One movie which you recommend for a startup founder to watch.
A movie. Um, I think Founder is a good movie to watch.
Yeah,
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 based on the founder of McDonald's.
correct.
Uh, for a startup guy, there are many other movies. Another one which comes to mind is also the Cinderella Man,
Oh yeah,
which is also, it's not about
that's a great.
entrepreneurship, but I think it's a lot about grit,
Hmm.
and how do you fight back and
Yeah,
achieve. Yeah,
awesome.
there are many other movies, but this is what comes to mind now.
Yeah. And I know you're like an avid reader like me. A book or a couple of books that you would recommend to a startup founder?
Um, The Shoe Dog,
Good night.
very, very interesting book to read. I would also recommend, there are quite a few actually.
Hmm.
Um, there is a book called Loon Shots,
Yeah.
which is beautiful book. One should
Hmm.
read that. Um, yeah, let's just do it with these two for now. Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot, Pawan. It's been a very interesting and very thought-provoking discussion. I'm surprised with myself the kind of question that I could come up, considering the fact that I know you well and I know the background that you're coming from as well. Any final thoughts you want to share with our incubatees? Any parting thoughts you want to leave with?
Yeah. So one of the things which I tell myself a lot, and which is that, um, you will be faced with problems all your life. When you're an entrepreneur, I think every day is like multiple problems that keep coming. You'll be highs and lows. And whenever you are in a situation where you feel, things are not good, getting okay, I think the question that you have to ask is "Karna kya hai," which is KKH in short form. And if you focus on solving the problem, then only you'll solve the problem. If you
Hmm.
focus on the problem, then it will be tough
Yeah.
to move ahead. So yeah, so "Karna kya hai" is one of the things which I would say.
KKH. On that beautiful note, thank you very much, Pawan. It was awesome interacting with you.
Same here, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for having
Thank you.
me.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.